Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to another Halloween series video. So for today's video, I am using some of the brand new, just released Simon Says Stamptember products, starting with this large outline spooky wafer die. I die cut it first from black cardstock, and it die cuts this rectangle with the letters. There's also outlines, like the letter outlines, and then the centers. So it gives you some options. So for the first card, I die cut the black cardstock, and then I just trimmed down a piece of white cardstock to be just slightly smaller than this, so I can use it kind of as a backing, basically. And then I took a bunch of scraps or trimmed little pieces of different colors of cardstock to back most of the letters, except for the O's. And I found the easiest way to do this was I just trimmed the pieces to be just slightly larger than each letter, and then I applied adhesive to the back of the black cardstock die cut, and then just popped these pieces of cardstock into place so that each letter ends up being a different color. So once I have these in place, I'm going to add adhesive to the back of the colored cardstock pieces and a bit of the black cardstock, and then I can pop that white cardstock into place, and then now you can see the whole thing says spooky. And then after I did that, I took the center of the P and put that into place. You could leave it, but more often than not, I can't not have that there. It just bothers me. And then the centers for the O's they look so much more fun if you put them off center. So it kind of looks like eyes. I don't know, this is one of those fun little die cuts that I'm like, there's so many options with this. You can just have fun with it. So that's what I did with this, is I took the centers, and rather than putting them right in the center, I just moved them off a little bit, and they just, you know, they look like the eyes emoji. So I adhered those, and then I decided for my card base, rather than doing a standard A2 size card, I did a little narrower. This is actually going to be 3.5 by 5.5. So almost a 4-bar card size. 4 bars technically like 3.5 by 5, but this size 3.5 by 5.5 is like the perfect size for this wafer die. Like, it just frames it really nicely. Again, personal preference. I am going to put this in just an A2 envelope, even though it's a little narrower. Fits in an A2 envelope just fine, and I'll show the envelope at the end of the video. So I just trimmed down some heavyweight white cardstock for my card base. And then I'm using the new bubble wrap stencil. I'm actually, my very next video is using this stencil. I'm already obsessed with it. It's just one of those ones where it's a very simple pattern, and it works with it works with everything. So and the stencil's huge, by the way, because it's sized to to work with Slimline, which I will use it for that too in a minute. But taped it over the card base, just using purple tape, working on my just grid paper here. And I quickly blended some Simon Says Stamp green apple ink over it. Didn't worry about the center, because that's going to get covered up. And then I opened the card, and I'm lining up that top piece of tape with the spine of the card, just to kind of mask off the top. And then I'm blending the ink again, but this time I'm blending much lighter. I'm not rubbing my blending brush very much into the ink pad, because I don't want it as intense. I just want, you know, just a nice light green. It gives it that pattern, gives it the continuity, because you guys know I like to finish the insides of my cards. So quickly blended that. So now the inside's got that pattern as well. And then for just the rest of the sentiments, I'm actually using the new CZ design. These are the reverse Halloween sentiment strips. I don't do any stamping on these cards. It's just die cutting and then trimming things down and a bit of ink blending over a stencil. So really simple and really fun. I've shown a bunch of these sentiment strips in different variations. Simon has released so many over the last, I forget when we started doing these, like a couple years ago, something. The more I use them, they're so convenient. I love it. I love it. So I like using my Fiskars paper trimmer. I know I show a bunch of different paper trimmers. The 3 I use are my 2 guillotines, the Tim Holtz ones, and this Fiskars one. The Fiskars one I've had for an insanely long time. And then my Tim Holtz guillotines I've had for years too. And I just, you know, alternate between the 3. But personally, I really like, I'm glad I kept my Fiskars one, because it's perfect for these sentiment strips, because it has the wire down the middle where the cut edge is, so I can see exactly where I'm cutting. that's why I use it. I literally keep this cutter around just for sentiment strips. So anywho, a little bit redundant, but you do what you do. So after I cut the sentiment strips, with these ones, I always edge the cardstock with a black marker. I'm just using my Memento Tuxedo black marker. It just kind of finishes them off because these are printed onto white cardstock with black toner ink. So when you trim them, it exposes those edges of the white cardstock. So I just like using that black marker. It just makes them look more finished. So after I did all that, I adhered the spooky die cut to the front of my card base. And then I'm adhering the little reverse sentiment strips with some thin 3D foam squares. These ones are the black ones. It doesn't really matter, but I do have a whole bunch of the white ones, and I've purchased a bunch of the black ones just randomly, and I just reach for whatever's handy. So I adhered all the sentiments. I glued the other sentiment to the inside of the card. And then I decided to make a second card because I had all these little outlines from die cutting that spooky wafer die. So I ran the same colors of cardstock through with that die, and you could see there, I just washi taped them to the inside or the back of the wafer die, so I could run those through all at once. Die cut all 4 different colors for the 4 different letters I wanted to use. So now I've got my black outlines, the color cardstock for the letters, and again I'm leaving the O's. And then I die cut some more white cardstock with the new nested rectangle slimline wafer dies. I used one of those to die cut the white cardstock, and again, it was like just the perfect size to fit these letters all in a nice little line. So all I did was I popped the color piece inside the little black outline, flipped them over, and then applied my adhesive, and then I was just using my little reverse tweezers to pick both pieces up at once and adhering them in one shot to make my life just easier. And again, just eyeballing it so they don't have to be completely perfect. I think that's another reason why I like Halloween, because you can definitely get away with things being a little more crooked, a little bit off kilter. It's all intentional. It's spooky. So anywho, I adhered those, and then the O's, rather than die cut color cardstock, I just adhered just the outlines, and then I die cut a couple more pieces to get the solid centers and adhered those off center again because it just works. I love it. So I did that, and then I'm using the bubble wrap stencil again on my Slimline card base this time. So this is Simon's heavyweight white cardstock again. This is a 3.5 by 8.5 inch Slimline card. This stencil and a couple of the others from the Stamp Timber release will fit across a Slimline card, but since I'm doing this on an angle, I have to move it over, which is completely fine because the pattern's repeating, so it took a second to line it up. So that's all I did. I applied the same ink over the stencil while it was on an angle, and then just moved the stencil over, lined it up a second time, applied the ink, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing to the inside, but keeping the ink blending just a little bit lighter. Just there, it makes it easier to write over it. And then I did the same thing. I trimmed more sentiments from that reverse sentiment strips Halloween, and I'm going to adhere the one to the outside of the card with those foam squares, and then the other 2 I'm going to adhere to the inside with my craft tacky glue. And then as a final bit of embellishment, I was flipping through my massive stash of Doodlebug and embellishments. I have these Halloween ones, so I pulled those out and I just stuck a few here and there onto each of these cards. And then off camera, I blended the ink, the same green apple ink, over the stencil, that same bubble wrap stencil, over both of my card envelopes. So I used just a regular A2 envelope for the first card, and then a slimline envelope for the second card, and everything's matchy-matchy. And these cards are complete and fun and super simple. So, as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will have a supply list. I'll link to everything I use so you can check it out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting, and I will see you all very, very soon in the next video. Bye!